You said that Zelenskyy is the best president Ukraine has ever had.
Yeah, I did.
Do you stand by that? Well, okay, is there any way that you would be okay with this ending without regaining the territory that you've lost?
There was basically like a small war in central Kyiv between Ukrainian citizens and Ukrainian government. At the same time, where like alarmed, weaponed like army sort of were trying to like prevent citizens from coming to the like parliament, and there a lot of people were shot. So in my case, why we are brave enough to like fight for our own victory or for like changing our own government, like we can do that. Why you can't? I was the first one who heard it, like just some very weird sound, because
how did you get notified? I mean, was it TV? Was it a
no
siren?
It's just the sound. I didn't watch TV. It's just the sound you hear, like it's just like here.
So you hear like the bomb?
Yeah, you hear like a huge like sound of something is fucking going on. Sorry, you're gonna beep it, but like
I don't know how to ask this in a good way, but were you not at home worried that like your home might get like blown up?
Like even now when I'm talking about it, I feel like all my body is like a bit shaking because of the adrenaline in blood, because you like feel it sort of once again.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Atheniano Show. I am today joined by a very, very, very special guest, Kate Trofimova.
Yeah.
Did I say that right?
Good, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it's the Greek.
How much time did you train to spell it?
To spell it? No. I pride myself on the accents. But anyway, let's talk about you and why we're here. So I'll introduce you. Kate Trofimova is the CEO of Digital Imagination Group, a marketing agency that provides complex marketing solutions for business and personal brands. She's also served as a social media marketing manager in Kyiv, a fashion journalist, including working as a media correspondent for the Ukrainian Fashion Week. And finally, she has worked as a model for over 10 years.
Thank you so much. That's the long description.
Well, I think our audience should know what an accomplished person you are.
Thank you very much.
So yeah. And today we are going to be talking about Ukraine. But before we get into questions, Kate, I understand that there is a charity or an organization that you want to ask people to listening to donate if they are interested. So do you want to say a couple words? We'll return to it at the end, but do you want to just briefly mention the name and we'll put it in the description as well?
Yeah, so in short, when I was invited to the podcast, I wanted to combine it with fundraising, and I chose the company that my friends own. It is basically in Ukraine, but operates worldwide. It's called Tvori Dobro, which basically translates into like make good deeds. And they painted the picture for me, and it like drove all the way from Ukraine to Edinburgh. So we can present it to you, and we can basically make a giveaway from all the donations you make and randomly choose someone who's going to win it.
Awesome. Okay. And again, we'll say more about that at the end. But I want to just start by asking you some fun questions that I kind of pulled from doing a little bit of research on you. So first off, you mentioned on your LinkedIn that you have many hobbies.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a few of them?
Well, basically, when I was a kid, I started from like dancing, like ballet, jazz fan, contemporary arts. I used to do like drawing and painting. I actually like learning languages, because in back school I was learning like 5 languages, which is Ukrainian, Russian, English, German, and French. And basically, I'm just the kind of person who gets used to a lot of things. So I'm trying to like keep me occupied. So I change hobbies a lot. Like I used to do horse riding back home.
Okay.
Not that much anymore. Like gym, stretching. Well, basically, I'm like all in all the adventures if I can.
Awesome. Can I ask you to move the mic just a tiny bit closer to you?
Oh, closer. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Second thing, you said that you read over 60 books last year.
Yeah, I was very bored.
Can you tell me, number one, what was the last book you read? And number two, what is the favorite book that you've read?
Okay, so favorite book probably gonna be either The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene
Okay.
or the book called The Women's City. I'm not sure whether you translate the right into English, but I was reading it in Ukrainian.
Okay.
So it's very like, it's by Elizabeth Gilbert, so it's like very two different genres.
Yeah.
Last book, I think it was called Newport, Deep Work, but I'm still reading it.
Okay. Is this predominantly nonfiction or fiction?
Both.
Both.
So like 40 Laws of Power is more about like capitalism sort of stuff,
Yeah.
but like I'm considering it like a conscious capitalism. Elizabeth is like novelist more, but
Yeah.
she like writes in a very good genre, but it's like more of like romance book. And Deep Work is nonfiction.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Okay. And then finally, your motto is think big, dream big, do big.
Yeah.
What does that mean, and why should other people try to incorporate it into their
Well,
life?
it's just my belief in terms of like if you want to succeed in life in anything you do, like you need to first of all dream about it, so be passionate about what you do. Second of all, like measure your success and do the goals and like achieve your goals and like track your progress, which
Mhm.
means like do big. And like think big is about like having a big scale and like thinking and like looking long term. So like not see only what you have right now on the short term goals and like look what you can like succeed over a long period of time. That's why.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Let's get into your life,
Okay.
shall we? Yeah. So, born in Kiev.
Yep.
Yeah. Is your family also from Kiev?
Yeah, so my both parents are from Kyiv. My actually grandfather is from Carpathian Mountains.
Okay.
So I was very surprised when I like knew that I have like around 30 siblings from like second, third generation sort of, which was very fun. But mainly my family is from Kyiv.
Okay. And where? So the Carpathian Mountains.
Yeah.
For people who are not good at geography, where are we talking?
So it's like Western Ukraine.
Right.
Like the most western part you can actually find almost. So like
So near
it's
Poland. So
yeah.
like near Poland.
So it actually takes like a huge part. Like, and it's not only the Ukrainian territory, but I think people should know it's like a basic geography, hopefully. Hopefully.
We'll put a map on the screen.
Yeah. But it's actually quite famous for skiing in the winter, so worldwide, not only Ukrainian wise. So
All right.
probably some people who skied there.
And you mentioned, so you had, was it 33 cousins?
Approximately. I don't even know all of them. So it's just what
Yeah.
grandfather told me when he was telling me like some stories from his childhood.
Yeah.
And I don't even know all of them, just know some of them. Like close family, some part of extended family, but not to that extent.
Yeah. Would you say that you're generally kind of close with your extended family, like grandparents, uncles, aunts, or?
Well, with grandparents, for sure. I don't have any aunts or uncles because
Okay.
my parents don't have any brothers or sisters. But with my like family, I am like, it's very funny because like those who do like blog on any social medias, they know how like your family, if they are on social medias, they like react on everything you do, like comment, post,
Yeah.
like react on your every stories you post. So what my grandfather does, he has like a smartphone.
Yeah.
So he literally like comments on my stories and be like, I don't really understand what did you write in English, but that's cool. So I would say pretty close. I'm trying to call them like at least once a week.
That's
like
very
for all
nice.
of them.
And they're still in Ukraine?
Yeah, so my grandparents still in Kyiv in the countryside house right now.
Uh-huh.
And my grandfather on father's side is in Germany right now.
In Germany?
Yeah, he moved after the full-scale invasion. So he's there with some of his relatives.
Nice, nice. And so how long have you been in Edinburgh now?
It's actually in 2 days. It's going to be anniversary of me being 2 years in UK. But
Okay.
I started from like England and I moved to Edinburgh like 1.5 years ago. So getting used to.
Do you miss home in Kyiv?
I do, just because the mentality of people and basically like social culture is very different.
Yeah.
Like I don't have any issues with like English or like communicating, but generally speaking, like I probably you would experience the same even though you're from New York. Like
Yeah.
if you moved here, people are different, like in every city and
Yeah.
country. So like For example, I told you that all Ukrainians are very straightforward.
Yeah, you did say
And
that.
here, it's not at all like a culture of speaking. Like,
Yeah.
people considering being straightforward like being rude. And for me, it's very uncomfortable because I know that if I can write like 5-word email, I will just send it kind of email instead of like being polite for like 100 words sort of.
Yeah. See, I think here I overcompensate for the formality because I'm like I had that in the back of my because in New York, people just like yell at you like and like but like in not like they're mad at you, but it's like when they want you to know something, they'll just like doesn't matter who you are, they'll just like say it directly to your face. But here I feel like I have to like dance around and be like, oh, dear blah 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 blah, I hope you just a very formal like email process and communication. So I feel like I overcompensate in the UK. But
it's actually very interesting why. Like I never really understood that. I was trying to figure out like historically wise why that like this way, but I never really got it. Because like even worldwide we see like Italy, Spain, like Central Europe, they all are more like emotional anyway.
Yeah.
But
well, it's interesting. I was talking about this on an earlier podcast, but the warmer countries tend to be
warmer,
and the colder countries tend to be a little bit like hands to themselves. When you greet them, it's like you just kind of stand here, and it's interesting why that kind of develops that way.
Mm-hmm. But I was in Kazakhstan not that a long time ago, and it's relatively quite cold.
That's true.
If you know the climate in there, and people are still very friendly. Like very friendly.
Yeah.
If you have ever been like in Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan,
to be honest, I've never been to Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan. I would love to go to Georgia. That is a country because I adore Georgian food.
There's only one place in Edinburgh, Hungry Wolves. That's it. I never found any other restaurant here. Did you?
No. I mean, most of the Georgian food I've had is either abroad or in New York, but I'm a big fan.
Me too. It's very underrated.
It is. I could not agree with that more. It's very underrated food.
Have you ever tried Ukrainian food?
I have. There's a couple Ukrainian restaurants in New York.
Okay.
Yeah. There's actually a Ukrainian... so we have like a town which is called... it's called like Little Odessa.
Really?
Yeah. But it's basically for all people who immigrated here to the US from former Soviet Union countries. So you have like Ukrainians, you have Russians, you have
it's like Little Eastern Europe.
Yeah. But then there's a separate area which is smaller, but that is only Ukrainian. And there's like a Ukrainian primary school there. There's Ukrainian supermarkets. There's like Ukrainian restaurants.
I have one more reason to visit New York.
You have to visit.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm just distracting you from your questions. But,
No.
But I'm this kind of person. I just fly towards the topics.
Yeah.
When you get it into your mind.
Yeah. Anyway, so where were we? Yes. You grew up in Kyiv. What do you remember most about kind of the early days of your childhood growing up there? I mean, take me through the early life when you were a young person, just a child growing up in Kyiv. What was that like?
Well, first of all, I always say that I was the happiest child in the world because I had the best childhood I could ever had.
Yeah.
Some people would say I had spoiled childhood. I'm not gonna disagree on that, but I grew up with my parents in the countryside. First of all, until the time I was gone to school, and I would say I had everything I needed, like financially wise, health wise, friend wise. I was very sociable always, and my parents were like caring and very like supportive of me. They were working a lot though, but I think it gave me like a very huge stimulus in the future to like to work towards the same goal sort of, because like I actually remember my early life either with like mom's office or in the countryside house.
Yeah.
because it was really fun. Because I think that's why actually I become like founder of the company here, just because like I grew up with a mentality of like you gotta like do something big when you grew up. So this was my early life. And if we're talking about like more sad subject, when the first Maidan happened and the Crimea, like the annexation of the Crimea, I was still very young, so I didn't really understand what was going on. So it was like a small bubble in central Kyiv that I would say, like, and children was just taken away from there, so you were not really like seeing what's going on, only like through television. But only when you grew up, you understand everything.
Can we
slow down?
We'll just go back briefly to because I'm interested in the countryside. Is that like a suburb of Kyiv? Is that? It's
not like a basic expression of like a town. There's like different sorts of imagination of the countryside. It could be like a grandma countryside we all imagine. Can be like that as well, or it can be like newly built houses. It was semi-newly built houses that my grandparents built, but it was like quite big, sort of, with the garden, and they even built the swings in there for me.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's two types of the countryside.
Okay.
If you saw any like Soviet Union films about countryside, it's like the first option, and the second option is like about more modern situation, how like we have like a residence complex just outside.
Okay. I mean, so you grew up in the countryside until you went to school.
Yep.
What age was that roughly?
Like 7.
7?
Yeah.
And so what do most, not to generalize too much, but what do most young people do for like fun what is a typical kind of range of activities that young people have in Kyiv? Is it just like everywhere else, or is there something you think unique?
Well, I would not say that there is some like crazy secret behind like children time spent after school, but I would say that I didn't really have that much time to like spend with the classmates, because like I had swimming, I had like...
You swim?
Yeah, I used to, not anymore, because swimming is very like boundary sport. You like need to do stuff. I don't like when someone tells me what to do, so I used to do it just for like fun. But like I had a lot of hobbies, because my school was like from 8 o'clock till 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
So it's like a full-time job kind of. And after that I was doing like dancing or singing. I used to do singing as well. And I was coming home like around 10 o'clock at night to do my homework. So it was really like not...
So you slept good each night?
Huh?
You slept good each night?
I did. I definitely did. So it's more of like occupancy-wise like hobbies. I think it's actually something that like differentiates Ukrainian countries from like, for example, UK as well. Because like in Ukraine, we always have like a very strict schedule for all the kids.
Yeah.
So like school, hobbies, like extracurricular activities, like essential. You won't have like a kid who doesn't like do the same kind of routine.
Yeah. What about, so was there anybody in your family that you think was, obviously your parents, but anybody outside of your parents that kind of made a big impact on you even today?
Well, I would not really say so, besides my mom, but it's parent as well, because I spent a lot of time with her at her work, because she was like a right hand of like a huge corporation, and they were working on like real estate, and she was basically like had like, I don't know, responsibility of ruling 200 people sort of. Yeah. And when I was a kid, I used to spend all the time in her office, and like looking at that, I was like, this is something I would want to become. Yeah. But I think this was the only role model I really had. Beside that, I always had like the mindset of like, I am admiring myself in the future. So like my role model would be me like 10, 20 years.
You were a very deep thinker as a child.
I know, but I like this kind of like bigger thinking of things. It make it more meaningful, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's... I think you'd be in the top 1% of children in that regard.
I'm sure you also had like strive for like controversial things and...
No, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a baseball player.
Okay.
Do you know baseball?
Yeah, but I never watched that.
It's very big in New York. Then I wanted to be like an American football player. Um, and then I just didn't know what I wanted to do until much later on. So you're way ahead of me in that regard.
I think just the concept of like what differentiates Ukrainian children into like other countries, we just
Yeah.
grew up faster.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably due to like work conditions as well, but mainly we just get like this concept of responsibility and living separately from parents earlier on. So like here, people like understand what they really want to do in life around like 25 years old, sort of,
Mm,
or more sometimes, or they move out from parents or like from like
yeah.
roommates at that time. But in our country, like if you're 22, if you don't know what you're gonna do, it's like, really? You don't know? You should know.
That's funny. That's funny. What about traditions
Traditions.
as a kid? Do you have any traditions?
We
You must
actually
have had
have a lot of traditions, but if we talk about like basically, if we go back like years ago, there's a lot of traditions we have, but in like modern world, we don't follow all of them.
Mm,
But I would say like some interesting traditions are like, for example, Easter. We
Pascha.
celebrate. Yes, we celebrate Pascha actually on Sundays, this Sunday.
Yeah, yeah, Greek people do too.
Yeah, and like all world celebrated it like a month ago already, sort of. So like we have huge differentiations in terms of like celebrations.
To do the eggs?
Yeah,
The egg
so we
competition?
color. Yeah, and we have like I don't know why people don't do that. We have like egg competition where you like color your own eggs and then you
Yep,
like
crack
fight
them.
them. You
Yes.
crack them. And when I was a kid, I like bought like a metal egg that looks like a real one. And I was like, I'm a big boss here. That was fun. But we also like bake Pascha itself. Who doesn't know Pascha is like bread with like some ingredients inside of it, which takes like 20 hours.
20
to make.
hours?
Like, yeah, it's crazy. That's why I made it myself only once. It was the first and the last time I did it, but it was really interesting. And it's very sad that you cannot find it here. Like I was trying to find Pascha here to like buy it on the shop. They don't sell it. So the only way to do it, I like found the kind like baker who does it.
And he's going to ship it to you.
No, it's in Edinburgh, but it's like Ukrainian girl
Okay.
woman actually, but she makes amazing like pasta cakes.
Mm.
But this is the only way you can get it. You cannot just last minute go to shop and be like, I need it. It's just like long term. And we also always go to like church on the pasta as well.
Yeah.
To like use the saint water on the food we eat.
Saint water.
Yeah. It's just the water
Interesting.
from the church.
Yeah, yeah,
But
I
we
know,
call
I
it
know.
saint water, you know. But yeah, because I'm Orthodox Christian
Yeah.
and my family, all of my family as well, as most Ukrainians are. So we like sort of follow these kind of traditions. Yeah.
How do you say the equivalent of Christ has risen in Ukrainian?
Христос народився або Христос воскрес.
Okay.
Like there's two options.
Okay. In Greek, you say Christos anesti,
Okay.
which literally means like, yeah, Christ has risen.
Mm-hmm.
And then the response, like alithos anesti, which is like, indeed, he's risen.
Okay. We also have this kind of like saying in Pascha, you say like Christos воскрес, воистину воскрес. It's like in a communication you have like, and all the relatives call you usually, and you have the same communication with all of that, but it's fun. Like it's sort of bonding.
Mm.
And actually one thing I also found very interesting, like when I moved here, I saw like that all people like wear like, for example, like wedding ring on the left hand. In Ukraine, we wear it on the right hand. And I don't know why. I was trying to figure it out as well. And this just says it's like, it goes back to like old times when this tradition was born from Romans and stuff. But like, it's very weird. Like there's only like Eastern countries, some of them wear it on the right hand.
How did you notice that?
Well, I moved here and I saw people and I was like, why do you wear it on the left hand? They were like, because. It's like, okay. It's just interesting. I'm trying to notice the cultural differences. This is something was like
very attentive to details.
Well, at the same time, when, for example, I go out somewhere and
Yeah.
like I sometimes wear like a ring like on the left hand because I don't wear it on the right hand because it's a
Yeah.
wedding ring sort of for me in my head. But people here like ask me, "Are you married?" And I'm like, "No, why?" And that's how you understand like this kind of thing that are different.
Interesting. What about do you have any like national holidays that you do traditions for?
Yeah, we have like the Victory Day. We have, well, basically all fasts that are celebrated here, we also have them, but in different dates sometimes. And some national celebration like Victory Day.
Mm.
I probably am not gonna remember all of them, but we have.
Yeah.
It's actually a bit complex for me.
That's fine.
Yeah, I would just celebrate them, and then I like when it comes up to it, we do.
Okay. I'm gonna move to kind of less happier subjects. Let's put it that
Okay.
way. Um, so, when you were a kid, staying with childhood, did you think at all about that? Like, next door was Russia, who was like a threatening country. Did that ever like when you were young, like elementary school? Did you ever process that?
Well, when I was in elementary school, I never had like understand the concept of like war itself to that extent. Like
Yeah.
you like read the books and you understand it was like old times ago, like in the 18th and 16th centuries, and you don't really understand that it can happen now or it actually is happening right now
Yeah.
when you were a kid. And talking about like Russian-Ukrainian situation when I was a kid, like I was going, for example, to Egypt or Turkey, and like for example my family was like introducing me to some people who they met there and
Yeah.
they were like Russians, for example. It was like back before 2014, and you never really understand that like people can make a threat to you when you like speak to like another 10-year-old. You're like,
Right. Right.
cool, sort of. You don't really understand that, but after some while when it became like bigger on the global scale, it's
Mm.
actually very upsetting that when it just started, not even like all Ukrainians really paid that much of attention to it. Like not all of them knew it. Like
You.
basically like kids talking wise, like parents did, of course,
Mm.
but they didn't put it on the same scale as is put now. So like one upsetting fact is that like people think that like war started in Ukraine in 2022, which is fair, but not really, because it started in 2014 from
Right.
like Crimea Annexation. So like people don't understand that it's like long-term process that just not happened one day.
Right.
But when I was a kid, I didn't fully understand it because like parents protect you from it. Like
Yeah.
they don't really start talking to you like, oh, this happens
Mm.
because like it's far away, sort of. Because Kyiv is like central Ukraine, sort of, even
Right.
like ish, let's say. And it was in eastern Ukraine, in like Donetsk region, for example. And when you're a kid, you don't fully understand it because, for example, I never been in Donetsk. So if someone would tell me like about it, I would be like, okay, where exactly is it?
Mm.
Because when you're 6, you don't really like concerned about it to that extent.
Yeah. Was there a like you mentioned the annexation of Crimea?
Yeah.
Was there a point where you're like, not like an oh crap moment, but like you know what I mean, like it kind of hit you as like it's possible that this could happen to us.
I think it was when I was just asking my parents why we cannot go to like a particular part of the city. Because at that time they started like a lot of revolutions in Ukraine, basically in major cities in Kyiv as well. And people were protesting towards like government. They don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And that point you really start understanding when it happens in like in your city.
Yeah.
Like when you understand something is wrong. And I just was trying to ask my parents. But it's very weird feeling because like if someone has kids, they know that kids ask like millions of questions every day. And
Yeah.
sometimes this questioners like, oh, is this person dead or stuff like that? Like
Right.
you don't really know how to answer to this question, right?
Yeah.
So like I was asking this kind of questions and my parents was trying to like explain it to me, but not in a way of like harming my like 7-year-old brain.
Yeah.
So this is the moment I understand that there's something happening, but like not to the like oh crap moment. It's more of a like, okay, it's not great.
Yeah.
So when you grew up, it's slowly just starting like being more noticeable. For example, in my school, there were a lot of kids from Donetsk moved to my classroom.
Yeah.
And then like they start telling you some stories. They start like sharing that. But at the same time, you would never say any difference because this kid doesn't look like a traumatized kids who are like spend their times in the shelters when they were like 10. They're like absolutely normal kids. So sometimes it's controversial.
What about, did you have any stories or kind of things that either relatives or friends or ancestors told you about things that had happened, like ways that kind of major events that affected their lives, like the Holodomor or the World War II or, you know, the Maiden Revolution? Like, was there any stories that you have where like just either pre collapse the Soviet Union kind of stories that
I think as every family in Ukraine will have their stories. Like my family was not like harmed to that extent as a lot of people did. But like I think during the Holodomor, it like a lot of people did, even my family. And like I think that's why we have a tradition in Eastern Europe that you are not allowed to eat like food in the plate. So like you need to finish what you eat.
Really?
Yeah, because like during the Holodomor, a lot of like 99% of the population didn't have anything to eat besides like potato that you ate like during the months and that's it.
Yeah.
So that's why when you come to like my grandparents as well, like they're trying to feed you. This is the concept of Eastern European, like we are trying to feed you as a concept of like we're trying to care for you because my grandparents didn't have enough food for a long while during the Holodomor. And that's the way they show their care. And this is something like that I interested in when I grew up as well. Because you don't understand it when you're a kid.
Did you learn about like those events in school? Like were those taught like to you?
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite subjects in school was history.
Okay,
So
me too.
yeah, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So during history classes, you start to understand more and talking to your family. But originally, like I would say that fully you understand everything that happened even during the time you were born already when you like grew up and you can fully like be responsible how you react on it because like everyone trying to support you and like protect you because when you're 10 you cannot really like influence on it fully. So this is it. And a lot of people, when I was in Ukraine in September, I visited Ukraine for 4 days. Like I would say people are just tired, but at the same time they are not like losing hope or losing their optimistic mindset or losing their like stories that they had, which was very interesting for me because sometimes when you look on the news and people think like everything's so horrible, like etc. It is, but at the same time you see how people are trying to like go through it and pretend that everything is okay so you can like go to work, have electricity, have water, etc. Because there's a lot of like, for example, like electricity shortcuts that you don't have like water or electricity for like entire day or for 2 days. So it was interesting for me how like people are adapting to new circumstances, even though it's like crap, originally speaking. Yeah.
What about we mentioned the annexation of Crimea and the Maidan Revolution and the war in Donbas. Do you have any like friends or do you have any stories, personal stories from that people have told you, or if you were affected in any way?
I have a story of my assistant. She works with me on the marketing company, and I asked her to write her story for me so I can read it to you. And I'm gonna try to find it right now so we can like basically get to know more from her story than from mine, because she's originally from like Donetsk, and she was the one who like experienced basically 2 wars in Donetsk when she was forced to move to Kyiv, and then now.
So for people that don't know, right, there was the Russia annexed Crimea.
Yeah.
And then following that was a war in the Donbas region, which is the easternmost part of Ukraine.
You're great at history. Yeah, I should probably clarify that. You're right. Sorry. So my PA is named Lila. and she wrote her story. I'm just gonna read it to you so I don't like miss important parts of it. So she said, the first shocking event, as I remember now, was when Crimea was annexed. I remember how my whole family was sitting in my grandmother's kitchen when the news broke. I was still a child and I didn't quite understand what could it mean. But from my mother's experience, I realized that I would somehow affect our lives. We used to go to Crimea every summer, and losing it was very painful for me. At the same time, we all watched with fear the events on Maidan, learning every day about the situation of relatives in Kyiv. And a few months later, the war began. At that time, everyone thought it would end in a few weeks. However, it stopped going to school because my parents didn't want me to study in the basement, and we moved in with my grandmother to a safer area. And after an explosion awoke us at night, we decided to go to the seaside for a couple of weeks just to get through these events. But after the end of whole weeks, it became clear that the conflict wouldn't resolve so quickly, and we went to Kyiv to stay with relatives for a short while. Relatives sent us our things by post, and we started a new life from scratch in the capital, Kyiv, hoping to return home for a few more years, and then losing even that hope. So going to seaside, I found myself in another city without the possibility of returning home and seeing a part of myself and my family once anymore. So basically, what this story is saying that it started from Crimea when we all used to go to like summer holidays.
Yeah.
And then to the Donetsk region where it like became sort of the same as it began in 2022 for all of us. But it began in like Donetsk in 2014. And basically she experienced the same situation we all experienced in 2022, but earlier on. And I think like it's important to understand that this trauma never really goes away. Like, because when war started in 2022, I was not sleeping that time. It was like 5 a.m. And like some things just change like forever. Or you cannot really fully express what you feel because like it's just a shocking experience. Like you cannot really explain to like people, for example, when some of your family dies, you cannot explain how do you feel it just because like it's just something you're trying to be positive to the most possible extent you can. But at the same time, like stories you hear daily, it's just crazy. Like how population of Ukraine decreased within like these 2 years, how people like ran away, the stories of people who like lose their like grandparents and like some of their pets as well or kids as well. Like the story that happened with the supermarket, I'm not very sure whether it's shown here or not, but like within one day, one huge supermarket in Ukraine was bombed and like around like 1,000 people just died within like 2, 3 days, 4 days.
Wow.
So and just some stories that you don't really hear out there or if you like search for them.
Yeah.
But I'm happy that I didn't like experience all of it on myself, that my family is safe to the most possible extent. But it's just people need to realize how serious it is because recently I saw a reel basically on Instagram where like there was a like reporter. He was like filming the situation in Kyiv and for his phone, but at the same time filming what is like on the TV. And basically he was saying like, oh, in TV, they're saying to you that everything is so horrible, but people in central Kyiv are fine. They're like walking outside and they're, yeah, but like, do you understand? Like sometimes you have like 100 missiles like over Kyiv at night and like you cannot really sleep. And at the same time, yeah, we have a protection and Kyiv is more protected than other cities, but you never know what's going to be tomorrow. Like, this is what upsetting point is that, like, we are trying to be positive about what we have right now, but at the same time, people need to understand that nothing is over at all, and we're just trying to, like, keep up with what we're having at the same time.
Do you think, I don't know how closely you're following, like, the UK media coverage of it, but do you feel like there's substantial differences in the UK media coverage of what's happening versus what's coming out of Ukraine, like what Ukrainian media is reporting?
I would say that UK media is one of the best media that we like. If you compare within the countries, like UK is trying to highlight as much as possible, and basically UK was one of the first countries who like suggested hostage to Ukrainian citizens. But at the same time, I think on the global scale, a lot of Ukrainian news being like cut just because there is like Palestine-Israel war at the same time. Like there is a lot of experiences we had in our daily life that like catch this like screen time, so we cannot actually fit everything in it. But I think over time, people just get used to.
Yeah.
I will actually like tell you about one book I recently read that really correlated with my mind about like what's going on right now. But if we are like comparing the news, I would say one of the like sad thing that I saw, like for example, Ukrainian film 20 Days in Mariupol, it won Oscar. Did you know about it? Yeah. So basically, one of my friends was like in the team who was like on the stage. And when they were filming like their speech about like how they're excited that they won the Oscar, and they were talking about like Ukrainian war, because Zelenskyy was not allowed, for example, to speak on Oscar. He wanted to, but they didn't allow it because it's out of politics. But at the same time, like we were having a speech there, like they were having a speech there about like 5 minutes, like general average time for like explaining how they won the category, why is it important for them, why this film is like very important to see, because you really understand how much Mariupol is like happening. And it's actually city in Ukraine as well, not that far from Donetsk, just for those who don't understand, in eastern Ukraine. And like they cut almost all of it. It was like only like 10% of 100% of the speech. Wow. Like the director was talking. And Disney explained, like who was like hosting Disney. And they said like, oh, our screen time was too long. We needed to cut it, guys. And at the same time, like last year when the film about Navalny won, probably you know about Alexander Navalny as well. It's like sort of the opposition of like Putin, at least to some extent. There is a lot of controversial thoughts about him as well, but sort of opposition. Like when his wife got the like award, her speech was like full on screen last year. This is what really like sometimes annoys me.
In that particular speech that you mentioned, the Oscar speech, do you remember like kind of the substance of what was cut out, or it's okay if you don't?
Well, I didn't watch Oscar live, so basically the speech was heard only during like live stream, but on the like recording it was cut. So basically they were just saying how were they filming Mariupol, because like Mariupol, the city like Kharkiv as well, it was a city that was like almost was fully bombed. Right. I have friends from Mariupol, and like their story is even like harder to like even imagine, because like there is no city at all. There's like a couple of buildings that were left.
Right.
And like they were filming this, like it's like documentary basically. Right. And filming about how like people's stories, how they were like film itself. Like that's hard to film when you have like, you need to go to the shelter all the time. How like scary it is, and like how Ukraine needs support for the scale, like the people to understand what's going on. And they cut it. This part, they cut it. Like, this is very sad, because I understand, like Eurovision as well. They are trying to stay out of politics, but at the same time, it's almost impossible right now to stay out of politics.
Yeah.
This is the first Oscar in the Ukrainian history. And I'm honored. But probably I will be the first director on this stage who will say, I wish I would never made this film. I wish to be able to exchange this to Russia never attacking Ukraine, never occupying our cities, I wish to give all the recognition to Russia not killing tens of thousands of my fellow Ukrainians. I wish for them to release all the hostages, all the soldiers who are protecting their land, all the civilians who are now in their jails. But I cannot change the history. I cannot change the past. But we all together, I'm on you, some of the most talented people in the world, we can make sure that the history record is set straight and that the truth will prevail, and that the people of Mariupol and those who given their lives will never be forgotten. Because cinema forms memories, and memories form history.
So there was kind of two. The first date was in November 2021, right? When Russia started to amass troops on the border. And then the second one was obviously February 24th.
Yeah.
Can you kind of take me through what was going through your mind first, kind of when Russia started amassing troops, and then what went through your head morning of February 24th?
Well, if we're talking about 2021, it was not that publicly sort of announced, because the government of Ukraine, they were trying to like sort of keep like nation in safe and in peace, so not trying to make like a riot all around that. So it was not really that like seen in the news all around, and they were trying to like minimize the importance of it. So when I just saw that news, it was like, okay, this is weird. Hopefully everything's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be all right. We're gonna be fine. Like, it's just sort of like you're trying to like deny what's going on.
Right.
Like, it's just first stage of like acceptance what's going on. And then everything sort of calmed down. And people were like, some people were saying like, it's gonna be fine. Like, there's not gonna be a war, full-scale war, because there's already war in Donetsk. Like, we're already fighting there. It should not be like full-scale. Like, everyone were saying like it's gonna be okay. Some people were like dramatizing, we're gonna all die tomorrow. Like, everything's gonna be very bad. So you're like, basically, you're trying to believe that everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
You don't really want to like believe that everything's gonna be to that extent as it's in like eastern Ukraine.
Yeah.
So that was the first reaction.
Okay.
But if you're talking about 21st February, it was actually time I was not sleeping that night. I don't know. I was just probably like doing some studying or working. I don't really remember. But it was at my mom's house. I was living that time with my mom during the winter, and like, I was the first one who heard it. Like, just some very weird sounds. Because
how did you get notified? I mean, was it the TV? Was it a
no?
siren?
It's just sound. I didn't watch TV. It's just the sound you hear. Like, it's just like, my mom lives not far from the airport. There is 2 airports in Kyiv. One is like sort of not that far from city. Another one is far from city. My mom lives near the one that is not far from city, or at least used to live. And I was staying there. So what are the first things people are trying to destroy is like airports. Yeah. So this is where you hear it.
So you hear like the bomb.
Yeah. You hear like a huge like sound of something is fucking going on. Sorry, you're gonna beep it, but like, you don't really...
We're uncensored.
Okay, we are uncensored. But this is just crazy. You don't understand what's going on. And you're like... I was going to my mom like, is it okay? And it happens often, or like, did something going on?
Yeah.
And then she was like, what? And then like, we woke up and like, we had just opened the news and we were like, the war started.
And this was at 5 in the morning?
Yeah, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, it actually started at like 4, but I heard it at 5. So...
I mean, do you remember what was kind of the initial reaction when you like realized? I mean, because I imagine like when you first hear that sound,
you don't understand it.
You're thinking, what is going on?
Yeah.
Right? And then kind of a period from that to when you kind of internalize.
I think I would not say that I still fully understand it, because it's a long-term process. Especially, I know myself that I react on traumas like long-term, like that I'm trying to block it to the extent of I can like function normally. So like, I don't get out of my routine. Like, I'm trying to like be as cold as possible about everything. because otherwise I just know I'm just gonna be like depressed and like panicked all the time. So still to this day, I'm trying to understand it. But initial reaction, it was like denial, and I would say like just adrenaline. Like even now when I'm talking about it, I feel like all my body is like a bit shaking because of the adrenaline in blood, because you like feel it sort of once again. But I was just trying to like make everyone peaceful because everyone were panicking, because I have a like younger brother and my mom, and I was just trying to be like, okay, what we're gonna do? She was like, okay, we should go to the basement, and we couldn't because there was issue with the water supply. So like the water tube was broken, so the like underground was flooded. So we couldn't go to the underground. So we were like in the bathroom, just like in the like huge bathroom where you can like stay and try to be like protected. And we were just reading the news.
Yeah.
And for like first couple of days that was happening. And I think after that while, for like until the moment I actually got out of Ukraine, I was like still in the like moments of like not fully understanding what's going on. Because you're just trying to be like sarcastic about it, and you're trying to like adapt, and you're just trying to call your friends and be like, are you in Israel? I have a friend from Israel. And she's like, yeah, I'm in Ukraine. How are you doing? I'm not great. How are you? It's like, I'm not really great as well. So this kind of communication, and like, it's hard to accept it fully. And only when you like get out of it, I started like more like feel it on my skin when I get out of there, so I can like breathe like freely and don't wake up every night from like the sirens and the alarms. Probably to some people it's gonna sound very weird, like how you cannot understand it if it's like going on out there. But this is like just the reaction of the organism, how you like react if you are stressed.
Yeah.
And if your body cannot like sort of handle the stress you are in. So this is sort of the reaction a lot of people get.
I read that you spent 4 days driving 2,000 miles from Ukraine to England.
Yeah.
After the war. Can you, I mean, I can't imagine. That's...
Well, basically my mom was driving. I was with my brother, and I was not driving myself. My mom was driving, and I was just trying to not make her sleep, which is hard thing to do. We spent, first of all, like around the day on the border, because, well, basically first 3 months of the war we spent with my relatives in the Carpathian Mountains. This was actually the time I read 60 books within 100 days, just because I was very like bored and I was very like stressed. So I needed to like occupy my mind with something that is not happening in my life but happens in the books. So this is a very bad secret, how to read a lot of books. Like when you're just stressed, this is what you do.
Yeah.
And after that, we just needed to make a decision, like what we're gonna do, because nothing was getting really better, and we should either go back home to Kyiv or go abroad. And we just thought that we can always come back, and we just tried our luck in UK, because we have like family friends in England. That's why we chose England, and because of the freedom of speech, because we can like basically easily communicate with people because our English is decent. And yeah, so driving 200 miles, 2,000 miles, sorry. Back to the question. Well, we made breaks every like 8 hours, sort of. You always like had sleepovers in Germany, in Belgium, in France. No, in France we didn't. In Austria. So you make like one country a day, sort of. Like you make a country, you go to like capital city, sort of, and like sleep over, then you drive another day. So within like a week, we got into like Manchester. But it was just long. You don't really feel how time spends as soon as you're driving. because you're making like breaks is not that hard to do, but just that the concept of like you have one car in which you need to like fit in all the stuff you have, and you just leave the country with like a couple of like suitcases that you fit into your bag, so you at least can like have something to change for. Like this is just like a decision you need to make and responsibility you need to take. Like how you gonna like survive out there if you don't have anything besides like yourself and your knowledge, sort of. And it was just long. It was just a long travel that was uncomfortable, and to some extent I saw some like words landscape, which was interesting because I was traveling, I was still trying to like find positive things in it, because I was like, oh, I never been to Belgium. No, this is really how you react. You're like, I never been to Belgium, this is very interesting. I never like been there on the car, so like I can see what's going on. And I was like, there is some skyscrapers, I never see this kind of skyscrapers in Ukraine, or like some electric stations when you drive through. Like you're just trying to be optimistic. You're trying to get coffee, eat McDonald's, you're just trying to laugh, and you're trying to like minimize the conversation about the future. This is something like it's very tough on you, because you don't know what to answer on that. You just like have a destination for tomorrow, and you'll see what you're gonna be like in a month or in a week. But thanks to our friends in England, we like established the basic life near the Manchester for a short while, and then starting adapting to the UK. But I think to some extent we're very lucky that we have friends, that we have support, and that we basically could have like get out of Ukraine alive. Because I really have a story when like there was a lot of like groups in Ukraine, in cities, of like civilians who were trying to like protect Kyiv, because there was on the first 2-3 days like basically some sort of like groups from Russia, they reached out to Kyiv. And I have a friend virtually who used to live in like just Bucha, just near the Kyiv. There are a lot of things that were going on there, and it's like a village, let's say. And he was actually like making like the Molotov cocktail with his family.
Really?
This is really, and he's sending the pictures to me, and he's laughing about it. Like this is how we are. We're just like panicking, but trying to make sure no one is panicking around us. Like there was also a video out there where like a man stole Russian tank with his tractor. Like if you will find it, you shall really add it to the video. But this is like literally how Ukrainians were fighting, because we didn't have our weapons like to the full extent. So we're just trying to like do whatever we can. And to some extent it's like hysterical laugh, because like I don't really understand how we had this kind of a bravery to like go through this event. But like for example, from my balcony, I saw like when I was at mom's place first 3 days, I saw how like she was trying to get rid of the rubbish, because we needed to like clean up the place a bit. And there was like some civilians out there who was like checking everyone's IDs, like where are you doing, what are you doing? And like it's a bit scary, because my mom told me like that you have a like man with a gun pointing at you, and you need to show them your IDs, because like it was the first 2-3 days of the war, and people were just getting mad. They didn't understand what's going on. And at the same time they catch like a spy sort of near our house in Kyiv as well.
A spy for Russia.
Sort of. Like it's like not, I would not say that like a spy that you imagine from movies, but like there was like small groups who reached Kyiv, and like they were like just separated, so they catch like person, and they were like making like sort of, I don't even know how to say it in English, but like they were trying to ask them questions, but in a rude way. And it was all happening in the like kindergarten garden. So there was a not like kindergarten, but like place where kids were playing all the time with swings and stuff.
Yeah.
With small garden, and it was happening right there, and I saw it from like my balcony.
Wow.
And like at the same time, you're trying to be like, okay, that's fine, but at the same time, you cannot really fully understand that. Like,
so you ended up leaving like your home in Kyiv 3 days after the.
Around 3-4 days, and we gone to Carpathian Mountains.
Okay.
For 2-3 months around this time, and then in May we moved to England.
So you were in Kiev for part of the time when like the Russian forces were trying to take control.
Because it was impossible to get out of the city. Like first hours, people were just trying to buy petrol.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like at the same time, like grocery shops, like it sometimes looked like apocalypses because people were just like rushing into the stores, get food, get petrol. At least we didn't struggle with the food. I'm very happy about that. But there was like struggles with petrol. So even when we were like going to Carpathians, in every gas station, you cannot get more than like, I don't know, 20% of your like storage in the car. I'm not really remember in like liters, but you could not really get like enough to get the full way. So you needed to stop on every gas station to get like a bit more of the gas or petrol, because like it was a huge shortage of it. And on the border, there was like some people who like were staying for like 24 hours for 48 hours to get out of the country.
Yeah.
And just because of that, my family decided to like stay for a short while at least in the Carpathians until all this like huge move like a bit gets more peaceful. So you can like at least not spend 2 days on the border. So better spend it at home. But yeah.
Were you not at all like worried that like did you, I don't know how to ask this in a good way, but were you not at all worried that like your home might get like blown up?
Well,
while you were in Kiev?
I mean, even when one of my dachas, we discussed, one of my countryside house is fully destroyed. So even on that news, you cannot really react. You're like, okay, I'm not gonna see this house anymore. Great. Like it just you cannot really like explain that and like go through it. Of course I was sad, but this sadness usually goes over time. Like it comes over time and goes over time. So there is no such a like point of like, yeah, I understand it fully. I'm like crying. I'm into tears. I'm like, I don't know, I need some antidepressants to like calm down. It's not really, for some people probably, not for me, and not for a lot of people who I know.
Yeah.
You're just trying to like keep up with the reality, but at the same time not trying to go mad from the reality.
Yeah.
So I would say just over long period of time, you like understand it and you cry about it and you like get this like wave of emotions, but not during like first wave. Like it just comes over time and then it goes over a long time.
Was your what were you what were you doing like career-wise at the time? Were you in school? Were you working?
I was doing both. I was studying and working at the same time because I got my first internship when I was 15. So I started working in marketing at that time as well. And I was doing my school at the same time as studying. So at that time I was finishing my school. And school-wise, it was like sort of not that hard for me because I switched my school that I was studying for like 11 years, because in Ukraine there's only 11 years of school. And I switched it like 2 months prior to the war, the full-scale invasion, because I couldn't like combine it with full-time work because I was full-time working and full-time studying.
Yeah.
I just decided to go to like self-learning. with exams, but without like school attendance. And like for me, it didn't really change anything in school routine because I was still studying online and like submitting everything online, and I had only exams. But I know for my classmates who I like speak to this day, they are still like, it was like break in school. So first of all, like first couple of days, no one like got out of the house.
Yeah.
Second of all, a lot of people were studying in basements because as soon as like alarm goes down, you just needed to go to the basement. But first like few months, it was like multiple times a day, like 10, 15 times a day. And like there was a special place for like school, so you can study in the basement all the time. Career-wise, it was a break for me. I think that's why I was reading a lot, because like all the projects I was working on, like they frozen for like some while. And I think only 4 or 5 months after the full-scale invasion, some of them restored. But at the same time, like economically wise, Ukraine struggled a lot through the time, because like if you look at the currency exchange rates as well, you can see how like prices increases but salaries decreasing, sort of. So career-wise, it was a huge break, and I think I started working fully only after I moved from near Manchester to Edinburgh, when I got fully back to my routine, when I like got to university here and was freelancing here, and then opened the company here. So only after that I fully recovered in this case. And I think my acceptance was sort of like going over time in terms of like me trying to occupy myself with sort of doing nothing. So in Carpathians, I was reading. In Manchester for at least 3 months. I was doing my documents, PRPs, gymming. I was doing gym 2 times a day, because I was so stressed. I needed to gym 2 times a day.
Yeah.
And I think this is the way I was trying to like survive, to make like a break from everything and like understand it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would say I was just trying to prevent from understanding, because I was trying to occupy myself so I can like continue reading the news, because it's very stressful, because you have like news groups in Telegram. Do you know Telegram?
Yeah.
So, okay, not a lot of people know what is Telegram.
I have Telegram.
Okay. Swag. Yeah, so in Eastern Europe, it's very popular. And Telegram, you have a lot of like news groups.
Yeah.
And you like every hour get some pop-ups about like what's going on around like news in Ukraine, about everything. And it is stressful. So like first 2-3 months, you read them every single day, every single hour.
Yeah.
And over a period of time, you're just trying to like not to like at least read global news, because if you read like our news, you get the news every hour basically.
Yeah.
You can just get mad, because if you really like understand what's going on, it's crazy. And at the same time, if you compare Russian news and Ukrainian news, it is like 2 different stories.
Yeah.
Fully. Like even if you subscribe to like Russian news channels and Ukrainian channels, like at the same time, like back in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, you would see the same situation described fully differently. So
do you follow like Russian? Do you look at the Russian news too?
I used to. Just because to compare, I was really interested. Like, what if people are using an excuse of like not understanding what's going on, or being brainwashed, or being like manipulated? Like, let me see what's going on. Because, for example, even my brother's godfather and godmother, basically.
Great movie, by the way.
I'm very Godfather, yeah, godmother. I'm always confusing them. So they are living with their kids in Russia, but we didn't talk with them for like 10 years or something. After they moved there and all these things started happening, like a lot of people just changing their position very weirdly, even though they are like Ukrainians themselves. There is a lot of stories of people who like really don't understand what they are saying sometimes.
So they say like stuff like, like kind of more on the pro-Russian side of things?
They're more of a like, oh, we're not like neutral, not pro-Russian or pro-Ukrainian, but just like we're trying to be silent and shut up and don't say anything because it's better not to. Like this kind of an attitude. Some people are, at least as far as I'm concerned, being pro-Russian as well. Even in like out of Russia or Ukraine, like in Eastern Europe countries. Sometimes this has been very annoying.
Yeah.
Or like also being neutral. But you know, as much as people they are on this planet, is this same amount of opinions we have about subjects. So I'm just talking from like a face of a citizen, not a politician or historical, like people who know everything from like political side of perspective. This is just my story and story of people who I know, and I can only say on what I've seen.
So you mentioned like the kind of the Russians who are neutral because they're like, I don't want to say anything. I think it's a difficult subject, right? Because even like in Edinburgh, I'll speak to the Russians and kind of off the record in private, they'll tell me, you know, they're very anti-Putin, anti-war, but they're very hesitant to like, you know,
publicly
even like go to a protest or publicly post anything online because they're worried about what would happen to them. And I've also heard mixed reactions from people on the other side who are like, well, so what if they have to, you know, if they could get in trouble with the government because we're at war. You know, that it's comparing like, so what if you lose your citizenship? We're at war. Where do you kind of stand on that issue of Russians who maybe internally they're against the war, but publicly or in bigger settings, they just want to shut up because they're worried about what could happen?
Well, in this case, I would just give an example of Maidan that was happening in Kyiv, where basically unarmed citizens in central Kyiv, just in central Kyiv, near like monuments, where is like Verkhovna Rada, which is like parliament in UK, for example. So they were like basically unarmed, going to the parliament and like voting and protesting, sleeping on the streets for months in order to get the justice from the government, in order to like switch the government. And there was basically like a small war in central Kyiv between Ukrainian citizens and Ukrainian government. At the same time, where like alarmed, weaponed, like army were trying to like prevent citizens from coming to the like parliament, and there a lot of people were shot. Like even though it's like central Kyiv, just central Kyiv, like situation. So in my case, I think like people have their right to do whatever they want, but like why we are brave enough to like fight for our own victory or for like changing our own government, like we can do that. Why you can't? Like we, even if we can, like why you can't? Like this is just something that always like I get in my mind when someone asks this kind of question.
Yeah.
But like in Ukraine, there was like actually like military soldiers who were like killing people on the streets.
Yeah.
And in Russia, I saw some videos from protests where like there was like some group of protests just in the beginning, and there was like one policeman who was running after them, and all the group were just like running away. Sort of some videos of them.
Yeah.
Like it's just people are scared of being imprisoned, and I understand that to some extent. But at the same time, like I think everything is being understood in comparisons. So this is the comparisons I make in my case.
I mean, it's difficult for me, right? Because I'm from the US, where we have, in terms of like countries that have rights and whatever, we can say whatever we want to a large extent, and we can protest and do it all kinds. I mean, what's happening at the universities now, like
Yeah, freedom of speech.
So I've never had, like, I mean, I have a podcast. I've never had that, like, oh crap, I shouldn't, I mean, there is like, oh, maybe this company won't hire me, or if I say something controversial online, or maybe they'll think of me differently. But in terms of like prison or life or death, it's never been a thought process in my head. So it's harder, I think, for me to kind of understand how saying something like that could lead to like prison or but I mean, you raise an interesting point. It's like, well, if Ukrainians are willing to do it, why can't Russians?
Well, as I mentioned before, but briefly, like I was recently reading the book, which basically says the power of the powerless, which basically teaches us by like how by telling the truth we can like stand by our point.
Mm-hmm.
This is basically the book by the first president of Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that really correlates with the situation right now happening in Ukraine in terms of like full-scale invasion and the way people worldwide, they're trying to like normalize what's going on.
Yeah.
Like as the same as was in Czechoslovakia when people were like, yeah, but it could be worse, or concept of like in Russia as well of like normalizing what's going on because of feeling like powerless. So if you like look in the history back there, like just in my concept, I think like if other countries could do that, why can't you? Like at the same case of like, I'm not sure whether you watched like the interview of the like Putin one, which was doing
with Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
I did see that one,
and I just saw like some moments of the video where he basically like sort of said that like Austria and Czechia, they were like, oh, they're like, this is their fault that they were like sort of like invaded. Like there was like sort of hints like that, like that they couldn't protect themselves, stuff like that. So like I don't really understand how like people can really like follow this kind of thoughts. Like I just don't understand.
So, before World War II, Poland collaborated with Hitler, and although it did not yield to Hitler's demands, it still participated in the partitioning of Czechoslovakia together with Hitler, as the Poles had not given the Danzig corridor to Germany and went too far, pushing Hitler to start World War II by attacking them. Why was it Poland against whom the war started on 1st September 1939? Poland turned out to be uncompromising, and Hitler had nothing to do but start implementing his plans with Poland.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, like, I mean, because you mentioned you used to follow some Russian media to see the propaganda. You mentioned you watched clips of the Putin interview. One of the things he says a lot, and which is in a lot of like Russian official documents, is that Ukraine and Belarus are part of the Russian world, the Ruski Mir, right? And he uses that to kind of justify, oh, Ukraine and Belarus are part of, you can't separate them from Russia. I think to people who don't know history, don't know, I mean, I have to be honest, most people in the US don't even know that Ukrainian is a separate language.
Sometimes that would happen. It used to happen, at least not before the full-scale invasion, but not anymore. I like, luckily I didn't really get these questions anymore, because if I would be very pissed. But like I used to have these questions like, oh, this is like different language.
I mean, yeah. And
it's actually different. Like what really surprises me that people don't really understand that, like, for example, all Ukrainians, we speak Russian, we know Russian correctly, but almost no Russians understand Ukrainian. So if I would start speaking in Ukrainian to Russians, they would understand like some words, because there is a concept of like surjik, which is like a combination of two languages because of their like ethnicity and background and all the things that happened. But overall, it's two different languages, and you cannot compare them. Like it's like Polish and Ukrainian as well. Like it's definitely totally different. Like Yeah, sorry, you were asking something. I moved from the topic.
Well, the point was, I mean, the point is, like, I think the layperson, right? They hear that and like, oh, well, culture is kind of similar. They're bordering both parts of the USSR. On paper, the languages look similar. People look kind of similar. I don't understand why that's wrong. I mean, so can you help the kind of that type of person understand why Ukraine does not belong to Russia? I mean, that's kind of it's such a weird question, because you wouldn't ask any other nation to justify like why
you deserve to be like.
I mean,
yeah.
But unfortunately, right, because that comes out of the Russian propaganda so frequently.
I think I don't really know how to even compare it, but like, for example, recently UK separated from the European Union. Like,
right.
Well, you cannot really say now that they belong to European Union, but like I think Soviet Union, European Union is the same sort of concept. When they like countries separated, it was like the combination of independent countries in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like there was not the fact of like Ukraine was part of Russia, and then one day they were like, no, this part is ours. This is the border. You don't go there. Like in the beginning, Ukraine was an independent country that joined as all other countries, as Kazakhstan, etc. Like they joined Soviet Union, and when the Soviet Union separated, Ukraine as well separated from Soviet Union. It doesn't have any relation to Russia. It's the same to say like, oh, that Kazakhstan owned Ukraine or Ukraine owned Kazakhstan. Like it just doesn't make sense. Like it's the same as like US looks like separate, not only continent, but like we have European Union, we have like US, and you had Soviet Union sort of. So when they separated, like the countries that were independent, they still are independent. And just because Ukrainian fields are like recognized, are like Ukrainian basically is a good business. You have a good fields, you can like grow agriculture. And I think one of the reasons why Russia is like so precise with that, because they can like double the income sort of from that. And just because of someone saying like it's theirs, it's not gonna become theirs. Like it is very weird. Like it's the same if you would like give me the microphone and I would say like now it's mine. Thank you. I touched it. I like met you, and now like I have a right to steal what you have.
Yeah. No, and I think.
Did you actually know that during like Soviet Union times and past times, why people like know Russian is just because all schools, theaters, everything was like forbidden to be like shown or spoken in Ukrainian. So basically you can be and you would be imprisoned if you like write in Ukrainian. Like for example, famous authors like, I don't know, Taras Shevchenko, one of the like famous writers in Ukraine, like he was imprisoned for the fact of like writing in Ukrainian.
Yeah.
Because it was forbidden by the government.
I mean, that's why, I guess the comparison is like why so much of Latin America speaks Spanish. I mean, they were colonized and they were like forced to speak Spanish. That doesn't mean they belong to
it, yeah.
And I think too, like, especially in Europe, the borders of countries have changed so much over history. And, you could point to so many countries. I mean, Turkey is a big one where I'm like, well, a lot of it should belong to Greece. But, there's, and another one is like Northern Macedonia, there's a whole thing with Bulgaria. And so I think, there's so many borders that have changed our history in Europe and the size of the countries and the way they've been. But I think the problem is, right, like if you keep on trying to like, we're at a certain point now where the borders are the way they are, the countries have a sovereign nation, and we're just gonna have constant war if we're just going to like dispute those borders. Like at a certain point, we have to say, okay, these are the borders. This is the way it is. You know, let's respect each other's autonomy.
I think just the point, like we have a saying in Eastern Europe and Ukraine as well, like that the history doesn't judge the winners. And I guess because of this sort of like establishment in world basically history and like mentality, like people forget things over time. Well, if we have a look, there's almost no country in the world who have never been on the war and whose territory was not occupied or like separated or like changed, right?
Exactly.
So that's why I think what you're saying is quite right, but to the same extent, like one of the like pro-Russian thought is like Ukraine is a territory, but Ukraine is a country. Like we have a very interesting like grammar point. For example, we say Ukraina and some Russians say Ukraina just because of like, and the same is like you cannot say the Ukraine because therefore territory. But sometimes you even see it in the news or like for Russian sort of like newspapers or debates like this is wrong because Ukraine is not the territory, it's country.
Right.
This is like a concept of like sharing the territory. It's just a bit different, I think, in this case. And there's a lot of like pro-Russian grammar or like news or thoughts that you sometimes use, you don't even know that it's this. Just like it's more understandable if you like speak Ukrainian. I would explain this to you. Yeah. But it's just a grammar point, the way you like put the spelling or like the way you spell some words or like to use the with them or a like a or like n sort of with them. It's just the case. Yeah, the history lesson.
I enjoy it. I've actually been trying to get somebody to like sit down with me and teach me all the history.
Well, you have your father. He speaks Russian, right?
Yeah, but I mean, he's not like native.
Yeah, but like you can, if you learn Russian, you're gonna be easier to learn Ukrainian as well. And yeah, and at the same time, if you would learn Ukrainian, you would mostly be easier to understand Russian as well. So you can try to learn it, and you have someone to teach you.
Yeah, one day. Okay, so obviously the war is happening right now. No shit, right? Like, but, and I think, I think the goal, right, is, what is the goal for Ukraine?
Get back to normal. We didn't really touch anyone. We didn't really want anything. So, well, ideal option, of course, is gonna get back all our territories, including Crimea.
Right.
But this is the goal, and I think it always will be. And I think if it would be any like, realistically speaking, like way of getting the peace with agreement, they would already get it over this long period of time. Because I think no one really said what conditions were like suggested by Russian or by Ukrainians, because you don't have the publicly like cited the conversation of the leaders. But at the same time, I think if there would be any like possible way of ending the war with an agreement, the countries would already like sign it for it. Because like I don't think that, and I'm not ready to like give up our territory for what, for it to like happen again in a couple of years. Like this is the goal. Get back our territories back and grow our economy to the level it was before. Because as I mentioned, like exchange rates, for example, before Crimea and the Donbas like war, it was like, for example, dollar exchange rate was around like 8. Then it was 16. Now it's 40.
Wow.
Like in comparisons to pounds is like Ukrainian hryvnia is like around like 1 to 50, which is like huge.
In terms of this is where there's a disconnect, right, between people who are from Ukraine who like have an emotional connection to the country and people like who are just kind of looking at it from a distance and saying, okay, where is the war now? What is the territory gains? What's the possibility of our heart is not in it in the same way that your heart is in it. But I mean, you hear most commentators and they say, well, the only way for this to end is some kind of off-ramp where like fighting stops, Russia takes the Donbas, the rest of Ukraine joins NATO, and the Russia pays a certain amount to Ukraine to help rebuild like Mariupol and the other cities. What to you would be the realistic, I don't know. This is so hard because, again, for you, right? You don't want to lose any territory. You don't want to give up defeat. But, okay, is there any way that you would be okay with this ending without regaining the territory that you've lost? Or all the territory that you've lost? I
truly think that I'm not really the one to judge on like the best possible outcome or like the comfortable outcome, because I don't have the right to judge on that. Like, I'm just a citizen. I'm not the politician. I'm not the leader to like judge on what's going to be best for us long term, because there is drawbacks and flaws and advantages of all the outcomes we can have a look on. And even if we like, even if the war stops tomorrow, there will be a lot of disbalance yet, and it would take ages to not only rebuild but like economically stabilize Ukraine. But at the same time, even if it would be fully like protected by NATO, it's also controversial because like they could have like closed the sky over Ukraine a long while ago already, so we would not have the like missiles over Ukraine to this day. So unfortunately, I think in this world you can only like rely on yourself fully and like hope for the best, for support from external forces. So I cannot answer on the outcome what would be satisfying for me to like end the war with, because it's from the first point there is no like satisfying outcome already. And best outcome, I don't really know. I think those who are in like the most suffered regions, they just want it to end and they don't really care how already. But I think there will be consequences even if it ends tomorrow with our territories back or without.
Yeah, I know that's obviously not an easy question, and there's no right or wrong answer to it. But I appreciate you putting up with me.
I'm just trying to,
I want to move now toward like a difficult conversation, because I think this is going to actually help a lot of people support. Like, I think from what I kind of am hearing on different news channels, the people that are skeptical of Ukraine is the people who feel like the way it's being portrayed in the media is like this beacon of paradise in terms of like there's no problems in the country, meaning outside of the war, right? And I think that bothers them a little bit, because it kind of makes them feel like they're being lied to, and they feel like, well, if you're not telling us the truth about this, then what other things are not true. So I think it would be helpful to talk about a little bit of some of the kind of internal problems that Ukraine has faced or kind of is facing beyond just the war now. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
So, this in mind, I guess the first question is, before the war, what were the main problems that people of Ukraine were facing? Like just, in Kyiv, in What was kind of the when people were thinking, oh, what are the main problems that we have to deal with, that we have to face? What were they?
Well, I think before the war, there was truly lack of like Ukrainian identity in the daily routine. So, for example, in Kyiv, almost 70% of people were talking on Russian on daily. So, like, you would hear Russian language out there more often than you would hear Ukrainian. So, luckily, like my school, it was like teaching in Ukrainian, but before the war, some schools were like teaching in Russian as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, like Ukrainian was like a language you would learn, but at the same time, like your lectures would speak in Russian to you, and like this is just in its core is very wrong, like because it's just like sort of Soviet Union mindset that we're still sometimes in some schools around Ukraine, like in Kyiv, it was more like Ukrainianized. And after the war, around like 90% of people speak like Ukrainian only, like especially in public spaces. So like people truly are like understanding these cultural differences, and they're like understand that even like small things in daily routine that you do, it's essential to still like do it in Ukrainian. And also one of the things that I particularly like saw this is unfortunately the corruption that was much more spread before the war. Like it was basically one of the reasons why we all the time were very unsatisfied with our government, because we have like a huge stock of finances who would we get from agriculture, for example, from like export, but at the same time we would not really get them into like renovation of the country. It would just get to someone's pocket. So that's why we would have such a thing as a Maidan. Like Maidan is just like a bigger thing where it was related to the war itself as well. But generally speaking, why we had like a change of our presidents and why we were not happy about our presidents just because of this point quite often. But because of the war, I think that Ukrainian nation itself, we just became more united. And this like sense core of values, it just changed. So like you treat a lot of things differently now, and you just understand what is important. Well, one of the other things that I would mention is like how we are relying on the external support, so that we gave up all our weapons back then for like supervision of other countries, but at the same time when we actually need them, we cannot like get them. And one of the interesting things that like atomic weapons and bombs, like one of the scientists who was working like closely with Oppenheimer was a Ukrainian scientist. I got to know that recently. I was really surprised. I was like, okay, so right, where is a like truth in it right now? Why can't we get access to something we actually created, sort of in like collaboration, but sort of anyway. So a lot of things like that. So relying on external support, I think this is a lesson we learned and the mistake we won't do again, because I think every country, first of all, for them is they're not gonna sacrifice their relationships, and there will be for other countries. So I think our dependency is something that was that the lesson we learned more during these times, and at the same time, the way that we basically sell all our sources we like gather.
You export.
Yeah, a lot. We export a lot. I think generally speaking, we should more focus on like internal development rather than only on selling and exporting it.
So it's national identity.
Yeah.
Which seems like, ironically, the war is fixing.
Yeah.
Corruption.
Yeah.
Which do you think has gotten better?
I think it did, especially during like first year. It got much better. Like after that, there started to be some ins and outs and conversation about it again. But I don't think that I have a right to prove it or disprove it, because I don't know. But at the same time, I think overall it get better, because a lot of people right now, they're doing, for example, private fundraisings.
Yeah.
So like we not only like donate to like the main funds of Ukraine, but we also like do the private donations with all the reports, and like a lot of people just spend money on the needs of like our armed forces,
Yeah.
like buying cars, weapons, tents, etc., anything they need, but give it directly to the like army groups, not to the government, which
Right.
also like sort of, I don't know, security behind the corruption. But overall, I would say it get much better.
Okay. And then the third one was reliance on external.
Yeah. Well, I think we cannot get rid of it right now easily. So I think it's just something we would hopefully adapt in our business model
Yeah.
in the future.
Cool. Cool. Okay. And in one of your many accomplishments, you were featured in Australian Vogue.
Yeah.
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 And during the interview, which I read, which you should all read, you said that Zelenskyy is the best president Ukraine has ever had.
Yeah, I did.
Do you stand by that?
Well, when I said it, it was only like first months after the beginning of the war, and I think what a lot of Ukrainians appreciated that it was the first president who didn't run out of the country, like after some shit started going on. Like it was actually the first president who was like, "No, I'm staying. I'm here." Because like there was a situation when the US like suggested him to get the helicopter for him and his family to
Yeah.
go like to America or to Europe. And he said, like, I don't need an Uber. I need like some ways to protect myself in
Yeah.
my country. So like I think this is something that like conquered a lot of hearts of Ukrainians.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people know about that, but like Zelenskyy himself, he used to like be an actor. Like
Yes.
this is how he actually like got the voting, because Ukraine wanted a president who would be representative of the nation
Yeah.
itself. And by standing whether he's the best president or not, when I said it, it was more of an emotional answer. Right now, I think there are always ins and outs, and people always need someone to blame. And I think so far, he's much a better choice that we could get during these circumstances.
Mhm.
I cannot judge whether it is the best for entire history, but I think his decisions and his support and his way of building international relationships is very beneficial for all of us, and we should appreciate that.
Mm. Well, I appreciate the honest answer. Okay. Do you think, I mean, we talked about this before, but so as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there is some differences between Western Ukraine and Eastern Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like Western Ukraine, the Ukrainian language is stronger. We talked about, you know,
Yeah.
the maybe the sense of nationalism is a little bit stronger in the West. We talk about the fight for national identity, but do you think that Ukraine right now is united?
Well, as they say, struggles like unite people. So I would say yes, and without hesitation,
Mhm.
much more than we used to. Like,
Do you think it'll stay that way?
hopefully. I really hope so. What I think that even if I have a lot of friends abroad, and what I see that I can always count on them, doesn't matter for how long time we didn't catch up. Like we cannot call each other for years, really for years. But like if someone would be coming into the city or country, or they would need some help, we would always be like, sure, what do you need? Like, and I would say this kind of like lesson and struggle helps us to be more united, and I really hope that we will be like that long term.
What is, excluding the war in the sense of struggle, what is something that has united? What is something that unites all Ukrainians?
think there is not one thing that I can mention. Like, it's generally what unites every nation. Like, if you have a look at any nation, we all have the same factors of being united, like language, culture, fasts, economy, mentality, etc. Like, I think all these things. And in our case, I think just war just gave it the boost. But if we don't consider it, generally speaking, I think mentality of Eastern Europe and Ukraine especially is like just unique itself. Like, we are very like straightforward, and we are like very helpful, as I mentioned. Like, we really cannot speak to someone for years and then like be okay with helping them out or like seeing them like as this time didn't pass. So I think this what really makes us united as well, like the similarities and the fact that when we like saw the outward, like we were in our bubble thinking that everything is okay, and sometimes thinking it was like, oh, shall I go to US and get like to the university in America or Miami? Yeah, like how cool it would be to get like a scholarship and like move to Miami, etc. But actually when you move out there is a lot of stories of people who are like, I don't feel like at home because people don't understand me. Like, even if though I speak the language, it's not the same. So I think the fact that a lot of people moved out, they like united even more because they like started valuing. So there's a saying like, you value only something that you already lost to the most possible extent. So I think in this case that also unites us, like just mentality.
Yeah. Maybe this is an obvious question, but do you hypothetically want to return and live in Ukraine?
Of course, but I'm not sure about living only in Ukraine because I understand, realistically speaking, how long time it's gonna take to like to get back to financially, emotionally, basically position in society and within the nation, like to the extent it was before the war. So I would definitely leave two countries, probably. I would spend a lot of time back home for sure, because I really miss home. But at the same time, I would travel more, and I would probably have like living abroad as well.
Yeah.
Just because I'm sort of used to it more right now in terms of like work, because I'm mainly working on the Western market right now. And I think sort of like this limit of being only in one country, I just crossed it already. So I think I'll just try to like combine living two countries. But definitely I really miss Ukraine. And you actually, like, all of you should visit it. You would get surprised how like relatively cheap you can like get stuff there.
Where should they go in Ukraine?
There's a lot of amazing places to go. Like Kyiv, of course, Odessa, Lviv. Like Lviv itself looks like Austria.
Really?
Based on the architecture, yeah. So visit the capital cities. If you want to get some history, there is the Chernobyl as well. Or you can visit Mariupol after the war. Hopefully there will be left something to see there. But there is a lot of great places. We have, as we call it, like Pingsy, with high level of salt there. That was just near the Crimea there. So we used to have it. So it's like a sea that has a huge like salt percentage in it.
Oh, it's like the Dead Sea.
Yeah, sort of. But like there is also like some places when on the sunset it looks pink. So like I don't really remember how is it called, especially how to translate it into English. But a lot of my friends been there, and it looks fantastic. It looks really amazing. But you can drop me a text on Instagram. I can send you the places. There is a lot of things to see.
Do you think there's anything that people in the UK, US, the West misunderstand about Ukrainians?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is like sometimes when people talk to me, they don't really understand the concept of like a refugee sometimes, because there is some parts of refugees who actually lost their homes, their income, like everything, and they are fully dependent in the countries they are living right now. For example, they live in like social housing or something. And some people who moved not from the financial need, but from the sake of like, I just want to be safe and I don't want to like die back home. And the thing is that like we're the same people as you are, and we have the same intellect and IQ and differences in traditions. But generally speaking, we're not like, I don't know, people from Antarctic or whatever. So we are so different. So you like don't understand us. I think this like barrier of understanding, of having like a picture of like a refugee as someone with like I don't know, ripped clothing. It's something that sometimes is very hard to understand for people, because sometimes like if you have a look on the like, for example, cars that Ukrainians come out, there could be like a Mercedes or like BMW or like whatever. And some people just don't understand, like, why did you come here if you have like all this? Like, it's just not the concept of like being ranks to riches. It's just the concept of like being safe and trying to build up a new world here with like with scratch in terms of like knowing the country. So basically our intellect and what we do, it's still with us. We just need time to rebuild it here. So it takes time. And a lot of people don't understand this, you know, hopefully.
Interesting. Do you love Ukraine?
Of course.
Of course.
Yes. I think almost everyone loves their homeland, no? Well, almost everyone. And I would never voluntarily move to another country if I would not, if not of the circumstances. Like, I was not planning to. So,
is there anything in the UK or in Edinburgh that helps you stay connected or feel close to like Ukraine even when you're abroad?
there's actually some restaurants that already were opened by Ukrainians. There is like sushi place called Miu Miu, like something like that, if I'm right. But it's sushi restaurant opened in Edinburgh recently. There is
Sushi?
yeah.
Okay.
There is some actually other places as well. When I was in Europe and I was in Austria, I was surprised how much of Ukrainian places see there. There is literally a place called Odessa, like restaurant Odessa.
Really?
In Austria. So I think a lot of Ukrainians, while moving out, they're also taking a piece of like identity. Now it's spreading more like worldwide on the recognition level. But what I really do miss and what is lacking is the mentality. Like, there's not that much of a people who would be the Ukrainians I would usually talk back home. So like, I'm not sure whether you have the same thing or not, but like when you move to another country, sometimes when you met like people from your homeland as well, people think you're gonna be best friends just because you're from the same country, but it's not the way it works.
Yeah.
So I think what really lacks me is this kind of like a mentality where you go out and you know everyone. So like in Kyiv, I could go out even though there is 4 million people, I would always meet someone who I know. Really, like it just works this way. And here it's not. Like, just because my character is a bit different to the character that people used to like have here.
Which is?
I'm more very straightforward. I don't like bullshit. Like, I really don't like it. So when someone is like giving me something, I understand it's a lie. I'm gonna tolerate it. I'm gonna be like, look, this is not true. Like, you're just overreacting. Or like, if someone would ask me my opinion on something, I would not be like, sure, this is something you need if it's a lie. Like, I would just say like, nah, it's not, it's bad. Like, make it differently. Like, I would just give my honest opinion. And people here are not that used to this kind of attitude. And for me, it is hard to adapt to it. That's why I also have a lot of international friends, some Scottish friends as well, a lot of family friends from Scotland who are like older. But at the same time, I, for example, don't get along with my university friends, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Almost. Like, there's some exceptions, but I just don't, because I usually like do things in advance. I plan in advance. I know what I'm gonna do. And when like I speak to people who don't know this, I just don't see the point sometimes.
Mm. Do you think is that specifically a Scottish to Ukrainian thing, or is that more you're just like uniquely hardworking and
I don't think it's uniquely, because this is something I heard from a lot of friends of mine who say that they don't get along with like people of the same age, for example. That's why I have a lot of friends who are older.
Mhm.
Like I have friends over 30. Like, and for me it's comfortable age of my friends.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm friends with a lot of my mom's friends, for example. Like
Mhm.
when we have like family friends dinner, I'm always there because I really want to catch up with everyone. So just the mentality wise, I think people here get mature later on, and
Yeah.
that's why sometimes you just don't get a lot of the values in this case with them. But at the same time, I think Scotland is a good second home, and I think government here done a lot of things for Ukrainians to feel comfortable with their support. So I'm very grateful for all that, because I don't know what I would do if I would not have this kind of a support, because you have education, you have like explanation of how everything does work. You have basically, I think Edinburgh is very friendly towards Ukrainians. Like they are very understandable and they are very supportive. I never heard like anything bad or negative about it, or people are always very welcoming and like always want to like get to know how are you doing, how's it going, how are you adapting. So I think this is something that really flatters me, and that I'm really glad there are still some good people in this world.
Okay. Let me see if I have anything else. Okay. Are you hopeful for the future of Ukraine and for your own life? Do you have hope?
You know, there is a saying, like, if you think that you cannot handle it, just realize that not handling it is not an option. So, like, I think this is something I live and stand for. Like, I don't let the thoughts of, like, being hopeless to my mind. And I always believe in the best. And I always believe in the positive future. And I'm trying not to think about the worst outcomes, but hopes for best outcomes, and do my best to be influence of the best outcome as much as I can.
Beautiful. Okay, well we've come to the end of the interview. So, Kate, I want to briefly get your opinion. Not your opinion. What am I saying? I want you to describe a little bit more in depth the charity that you mentioned at the very beginning, to remind people, but also tell people a little bit more about where their money would be going to if they choose to donate.
Yeah. So basically, this is a charity organization that is called Tvori Dobro, which means create and do good deeds. And this is a charity organization that is helping women and kids who suffered from the war in 2022, 2023, 24, and right now, and the future. And they are making the fundraising for the needs of those who suffered from the war from Eastern region, primarily for like kids and women, mainly for psychological support for those kids who are left without their parents because of the war. And they're making just like supplies of medicine, psychological help, clothing, toys, etc. So basically, first need that you need. And we're gonna probably leave the link down below so you can have a look on their website or Instagram or social medias to like see their data yourself, so you can be sure that there is like internationally recognized organization. Also, as sort of like giveaway we wanted to do in order to like stimulate people to donate. Basically, those kids I was just mentioned before, they made like a small workshop where they like done some paintings, and one of the paintings and done together. And there is a painting with like Ukrainian symbolics on it, and the name of the organization with like Ukrainian flags and everything. Like this kind of a size of the painting, so quite big. That was taken from all the way on the car from Ukraine, Kyiv to here.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're gonna be like giving it away for a random donation. So from all of the donations that were made, starting from today to like let's say a month's time, we'll just choose the donations that's gonna like based on the number system, we're just gonna choose a donation randomly and send the painting wherever, whenever you want, for you as a bonus.
Can I just ask one? Is that because I have listeners that are kind of in all over the world?
All over the world.
So is that just for people that are in Edinburgh?
No, we can. If this painting got from Ukraine, I'm sure we can deliver it to you anywhere.
To New York City.
Of course.
And so this is just to clarify. This is an organization that's helping women and children in Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
That seems like a noble cause.
Well, I'll be very happy, and the organization will be very happy if you're gonna help with anything you can or want. Please let me know if you have any questions as well in the comments. I will try to reply on them if you have anything left, by the way.
I'll link your Instagram. And
okay, yeah. Well,
you're
true. Very happy to reach out and give me your opinion as well if you disagree with something, for example.
Yeah. Please start a debate in the chat that boosts the engagement.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was wonderful. Really appreciate you coming on, taking the time. I know all the questions and things to talk about were not super fun, but I really appreciate it.
I just think it's very important to more people to understand it, and I hope that at least like small podcast and my involvement in it's gonna make at least one people to change their opinion, and it's gonna be success already, like in a positive way. So I really hope that there are some people who get to know history of Ukraine and the situation of Ukraine more within this podcast.
Well, that is a great way to end it. Thank you so much, Kate. Really appreciate it. Subscribe, obviously. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.